Welcome to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. Today, we're leading with Taiwan because the tension there isn't just another patrol. This week, analysts are pointing to a scenario where US China tensions over the island could escalate to nuclear levels if things spiral. The concern is not hypothetical. Both militaries could target critical command, communication, and surveillance nodes. The problem is that neither side has clearly defined guardrails or rules of engagement for these systems. Unlike the Cold War, there's no decades-long conversation track to prevent escalation, and China's nuclear buildup is moving fast enough that old assumptions are increasingly shaky. Beijing, as expected, rejects that framing, calling it inconsistent with reality and warning Washington to tread carefully. Their message remains that Taiwan is an internal issue. But pressure patterns are evident. China has stepped up deployments near Taiwan, with multiple ships along the first island chain and ongoing patrols of air and sea zones around the island. Taipei remains on high alert, responding with combat air patrols, naval ships, and coastal missile systems. The numbers themselves are not the story. The story is the normalization of these operations as a routine, signaling to Taiwan, the US, and regional partners that Beijing's presence is a constant variable. Japan is indirectly part of this equation. A new ferry route opened between Taiwan's Keelung and Ishigaki in Okinawa. Officially, it's for tourism, logistics, and cultural exchange, but the vessel is also listed for potential evacuation of residents from southern islands in a regional crisis. That's not speculation. It's contingency infrastructure quietly dual-purposed. It shows how commercial, logistical, and strategic concerns overlap in East Asia. The South China Sea adds another pressure layer. The PLA Southern Theater Command reported driving off the Dutch frigate HNLMS De Ruyter near the Paracel Islands using voice warnings and electronic interference after the ship and its helicopter were said to enter Chinese-claimed airspace. The Netherlands maintains the ship acted within international law. This incident marks one of the few times Beijing has publicly challenged a European navy in the region, sending a clear signal about freedom of navigation operations. Turning to defense diplomacy, Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun is skipping the Shangri-La dialogue again. Instead, Beijing is sending PLA-affiliated experts, scholars, and Navy personnel. This low-profile delegation comes as U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is expected to speak, and as questions loom about whether ongoing corruption purges in the PLA are affecting readiness. Dong's predecessors Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu were both purged this month, highlighting internal military instability. These purges, combined with reduced senior-level engagement at the forum, suggest that China is managing optics while quietly maintaining pressure. On the tech front, China is exploring AI token futures through the Shanghai Futures Exchange. These contracts would tie directly to the cost and consumption of AI tokens, the basic units used to run AI models. This approach differs from US GPU compute futures, which focus on renting processing power. China's aim is to hedge compute costs and expand its domestic financial ecosystem around AI. Official data shows daily token use has surged to over 140 trillion units, underscoring the urgency. Shortages have forced rationing in some AI services, highlighting the strategic importance of turning compute scarcity into a marketable asset. Europe is responding to Chinese industrial pressure with broader measures. The EU is expanding import quotas and tariffs to protect sectors like chemicals, metals, and clean tech from what it sees as unfair competition. China fired back, accusing the EU of cherry-picking data and dressing up protectionism as trade balancing. Separately, Beijing is negotiating with the EU through the WTO over duty-free steel limits, signaling that these disputes have global supply chain implications. Meanwhile, Chinese manufacturing is going global. Companies like BYD, CATL, Chery, and Midea are establishing factories in Europe, North America, and South America. Host countries gain jobs and investment, but concerns remain about the competitive pressure, labor practices, and limited local value add from these operations. The EU has proposed requirements for local hiring, technology transfer, and sourcing European components in strategic sectors to counterbalance this influence. Boeing's China deal also illustrates the use of market access as leverage. China committed to buying 200 jets during President Trump's visit, described as an initial tranche with potential for 300 to 500 more. Future orders hinge on guarantees for engine parts and components, reflecting Beijing's preference for staged commitments tied to assurances from the U.S. This is commercial diplomacy with teeth, opening markets while controlling conditions and signaling leverage. Finally, China's space program continues to push boundaries in long-duration habitation. Researchers launched synthetic embryo models to the Tiangong space station to study development under microgravity. The samples cannot develop into humans, but they will provide insight into human biological adaptation for long-term missions, a strategic step as the U.S. also moves toward a sustained lunar presence. This shows that the next space race is not about flags or brief missions. It's about who can live and work off-world most sustainably. Thanks for listening and for being part of this community. If you want to support the show, leaving a review or a thoughtful comment helps others discover it. We also share a daily written intel brief on Substack, restrictedhandling.substack.com, where we go deeper on Russia and China, along with broader coverage of Iran, the Middle East, and the DPRK. Wishing you a great day ahead.